What about the housing market? What a terrible shock it will have been to some people who were in the process of trying to buy, trying to sell, or thinking about it, to see mortgage products withdrawn. And if the conveyancing didn't happen quickly enough, and God knows it doesn't, then deal offers running out. What, only to be renewed at a higher rate? There's a lot of reasons to say that a lot of transactions were put on hold. But let's take the view of an expert. Henry Pryor is with us, property expert and buying agent. Henry, hi there.
Andrew, morning to you, sir.
Very good morning. Talk of a housing crash always looks very dramatic. Make us feel better.
We haven't got the evidence for one. There's a lot of concern in the market about what might happen, and I think it is universally accepted that house prices, before the Chancellor stood up last Friday, would have softened going forwards, possibly by somewhere in the order of 3 to 5%. And there still are some incredibly big brains who think that that is the likely outcome going into 2023. But at the moment, although there is a lot of concern, many people, I'm afraid, Andrew, are doing exactly what you've just described when it comes to the Ukraine. They are reading stuff online, they are getting wound up by Twitter, and they are following the herd, as it were, and they are talking themselves, if they're not very careful, into something that would be a lot worse than I suspect it will end up being.
Fact is that we're going to have to live with higher interest rates for a while. Can I ask you something? Were interest rates on the way up anyway? Are they higher as a direct result of the mini budget and the reaction to it?
Interest rates were already heading upwards, and we were always expecting them to do so. We've lived in an era of exceptionally artificially low interest rates since the credit crunch and the financial crisis of 2008, through something called funding for lending, which most listeners will be more familiar with as QE, quantitative easing. We've enjoyed, in inverted commas, interest rates this time last year at 0.1%. And over the last 15 years, they've bumbled along not much higher than that. But it was always going to end. And in the summer, we were talking about interest rates at going to perhaps 2 or 2.25%. And indeed, the week of the budget, we may remember that the Bank of England raised rates again. And there were some members of the MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee at the Bank of England, who wanted to see rates raised even more. What is, I think, undoubted, Andrew, is that the rise in borrowing costs was accelerated by what the Chancellor stood up and announced, because the implications of what he was talking about scared the markets witless, and as a result pushed up the basic borrowing costs that banks and building societies use when they're coming forward to offer you a mortgage product.
Are mortgage deals coming back to market now?
Very, very slowly. We're missing something in the order of 1,500 mortgage products.
Out of how many?
And well, that's about 40% of the normal of the number that would normally be available. And it's a bit easier to imagine it as if you walked into your local Tesco's or Sainsbury's and finding that there were no cornflakes on the shelves or bread on the shelves or milk in the fridge. These products will come back, but only once lenders have worked out how to price them. They lend you and I money, Andrew, as a mortgage, having borrowed it in inverted commas in the first place. They didn't know what they had to pay for that money the week before the Chancellor stood up and delivered his budget, and they traditionally would have added 0.5 point or 1% to that. But at the moment, if they want to make an offer to you or to me, they don't know what it's going to cost them when they come to complete the deal in 6 to 8 weeks' time. Until they do know that, those products are not going to return.
Paul Henley's a regular tweeter. He says there will not be a housing price crash. Lack of supply and plenty of foreign money waiting to take advantage of the weak pound will keep prices level. What do you say?
Well, I think that probably we're likely to see prices soften, but I don't think they're going to crash. And I'm not sure that all of us yet really have worked out what a crash would look like. Lots of people say if they fell by 15%, that would be a crash. Well, that would take us back to where we were this time last year. They've risen by 15.5%.
And also, let's be honest. I mean, are we talking one-bed flats in cities? Are we talking about four-bed houses with land in Cumbria? Are we you can't really say the market, can you?
Well, you can talk about the housing market, but you must accept that it's a bit like a supertanker. It takes ages to change direction or indeed to slow down. And at the moment, we've got annual house price inflation at 15.5%. For that to turn negative, a huge amount has to happen. Now, the Nationwide told us at the end of this week that month-on-month house price inflation was flatlining. Yeah. So actually, they're bound to be lower as we go forward. But I think that there certainly isn't enough evidence to suggest that prices are going to plummet, let alone crash, if we knew what our definition of a crash would be.
Henry, good to speak with you again. Henry Pryor, property expert and buying agent, 7:46.